2009, only 14% of adult Indians donated cash and 12% donated time. By 2013, those numbers almost doubled. In 2013, 28% of adult Indians donated cash and 21% donated time. That's a staggering increase of more than 100 million more Indians making donations in cash or time than in 2009. And while India may not have made much progress on the Ease of Doing Business Index, in the World Giving Index, our rank has moved from 134 in the year 2010 to 69 today. Hello and welcome to this special show on the joy of giving. As the Daanutsav kicks off today, we celebrate not only the act of giving, but giving purposefully. Among developing countries, India may be more philanthropic than others. But can Indian philanthropy solve social problems? That's what we're going to discuss today with Ajay Piramal, the chairman of the Piramal Group, Mariwala, the chairman of Marico, and Anshu Gupta, the founder of Goonj, the 2015 Ramon Magsaysay Award winner as well. I'm also delighted to welcome my co-host Amit Chandra, the managing director of Bain Capital Private Equity. Gentlemen, to all four of you, a warm welcome. Amit, I'm going to start first with asking you to identify what you have experienced as challenges in this entire process of giving.
Thank you, Menaka. I think before I get into challenges, I must say that my 15-year journey in the social sector has showed me that together Indians, when we apply our minds and collaborate, can actually make a big difference to social problems that the country faces. I think so. First of all, there's an immense opportunity. However, I think the challenges stem from the fact that the scale of the problems are just enormous and in many cases are deep-rooted within society. And therefore, what you really require is giving to be very, very purposeful. We need to approach giving with the same doggedness that we approach building companies. And we built a number of great companies in this country over the last 50 or 60 years. But we need to basically address social causes with that same doggedness, sense of organizational capability, and importantly, back it up with money. You made the point that giving in India has increased a lot, but I would still argue that the glass is not even half full or half empty. It's probably just, got a few drops in it. Giving has a long way to go in India yet. We are still giving very little of the wealth we create, and I think our actions will only be purposeful if we actually back it with a lot more capital.
That's fair. In the UK, the same study says 74% of people make charitable donations. In India, we're only at 28, but 28 is double 14, from 2009. So that is great progress, and I think we should find joy in that. I'm going to ask both my corporate guests on this panel to talk about the scope of the work that they're involved in. Mr. Piramal, personally, through the Piramal Foundation, can you describe some of the causes that you're focused on, the kind of efforts you've put into them, whether it's money or otherwise, and then we'll come to some of the challenges that you see this space facing.
So we work in a few areas. One is in the space of education. We do work in youth leadership. We're doing it in midday meal programs. We're doing it in health to the people who don't have access to health care, in clean drinking water.
Right.
And so across various initiatives, we are working in a significant manner, actually. So for education, we are now touching about 1,300 schools every day, where we train headmasters to become more effective. These are all public schools, so we cover about 130,000 children on a daily basis in this. And we have today a fellowship program for youth, people who have either graduated or have done post-graduation, and we ask them to give 2 years of their life working with headmasters of public schools. And that is, today we have about 200 of them. And so that's the other initiative that we do in terms of midday meals. The ISKCON Foundation, which is an Amrita, through that we do about 12 lakh meals every day.
Wow.
And I also am involved with Pratham.
For many years
yes,
now.
And Pratham's whole mission is to see that every child is in school and is learning well. Today we are touching 77 million children on that, and across states. So several initiatives like this.
Okay, a quick follow-up question. Do your personal initiatives and the initiatives followed through by your corporate foundation, do they converge? Do you intend for them to converge because that gives you more scale, or do you keep them distinct for other reasons?
So it's not a very clear distinction. There are some which are very personal, which I do personally. But there are other initiatives which were started personally, because again, a lot of these initiatives, actually there is innovation. So in innovation there has to be failure. So we did not want to, so let's say the education initiative that we started, or we started an initiative for water to see that clean drinking water is provided to all. All these were personally started. Now we have graduated the initiative for learning and for school levels into the corporate foundation, because the scale has become much bigger.
Okay. Mr. Mariwala, your personal initiatives and the initiatives followed through by the Marico Innovation Foundation are fairly distinct. Can you talk us through your philosophy of philanthropy and, you know, a little bit about the scope of all the ventures you hope to touch?
Yeah, I think I would call personal as personal social responsibility and corporate as CSR and PSR. You know, I think it rhymes well. But before starting either on the personal front or the corporate front, I had some framework in terms of what I want to do. And I was very clear that we wanted to impact large numbers. We wanted to do something which was pioneering. We did not want to invest in any hardware like a school or hospital. We wanted to play a catalytic role in helping others. We wanted to look at the cause and not the effect. For example, if I'm looking at health, I would look at preventive health rather than curative health, which is like going to hospital and getting cured. How can you lead a better lifestyle so that the need for going for medical attention itself is reduced? And another last thing was I wanted to be actively involved. So that meant that whatever I did, it had to have a passion within me. So with these kind of guidelines, I identified 4 areas which I was passionately involved. And these 4 were entrepreneurship, preventive health, education, and innovation. And I think that became the basis of selection at the corporate level as well as at the personal level. So at a corporate level, we started Marico Innovation Foundation, which has been there for the last 10 years or so. And we've done a series of initiatives. Initially, we started doing research on innovation. Then we came out with an innovation book, which has become a bestseller. The whole objective of the Innovation Foundation is to fuel innovation within India. So basically, we try and connect, select good organizations, connect people. We also involve our own employees to actually go and help.
And many of these are not-for-profit organizations.
Many of them are not-for-profit.
Most, in fact, on the list are not-for-profit. Like, for instance, EnviroFit or IRAM or Tara. They're all not-for-profit, including Akshay Patra, which is a very well-known effort already.
I think it was a fantastic model which we came up with, hub-and-spoke model. You know? So I think that's the innovation thing which at the corporate level. The personal level, my journey is of recent origin as compared to Ajay. So 3 years back, I started... I told you about entrepreneurs. I believe that entrepreneurs add a lot of value to the society. And from my own experience, I realized that many entrepreneurs have fantastic ideas, but they are not able to scale up. So we have working with about 300 entrepreneurs in Bombay.
This is part of the Ascent program.
And now we want to grow beyond Bombay to other centers. So that's been operational for the last 3 years. And of late, last year, I started one mental health initiative. And realized that mental health is a big problem. It's increasing because of urbanization, because of increased pressures at work or in school or colleges, admission. And I think that's leading to a lot of bottling up of pressure, leading to higher degree of suicide and level of suicide. And can we actually help them overcome those pressures? So first initiative in that is we tied up with this Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and we are operating a call center which comprises of 10 individuals. It's a free service given starting at 8 in the morning to 10 in the night. Over a period of time, we want to create awareness on mental health. We want to increase capacity by training more counselors. We want to improve service delivery. And we want to create networks and finally do some research on this. So these are the 2 initiatives on the personal side. One on the corporate side, but they are not connected to each other.
They are distinct, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about them. You've also mentioned scale at several points in your response. The final question I put, Amit, before I hand it over to you, is to Anshu Gupta of Goonj. There are very few Indians interested in this space that don't know what Goonj and Anshu Gupta have achieved. But for those who don't and who are joining us late on this, it's very difficult to describe what Goonj attempts to do. Clothing, would never do it justice, but I'll still use the word clothing, and I'll give you some numbers to give you a sense of the scale Goonj has achieved in the last several years. Over 2.5 million sanitary pads produced out of waste cloth, over 300,000 kilograms of throwaway waste cloth converted into traditional mattresses and quilts. These are just some numbers that measure the impact Goonj has had. For the other numbers, I'm going to go to Anshu and ask him, Anshu, how would you describe your journey over the last 10 years, what the unfinished agenda is, and therefore where you think Indian philanthropy can help?
So I think if I try to talk in a nutshell, I think we're just trying to work on the non-issues. So right from water, sanitation to very basic 2 meals a day is the basic problem. And that is where we identified the issues of, or rather the non-issue of clothing. And we said that this is something which has been ignored, and you can imagine, if you talk about Millennium Development Goal to SDGs to any kind of planning commission, Niti Aayog, to any kind of budgeting, you have some 100-150 issues from domestic violence to global warming. You will never find clothing written as a subject, although that is such an important thing for us. I mean, this is and the fact remains that in a country like India, you see more people dying because of lack of clothing in winters than earthquake or floods. Ask anyone and say donation, the first thing which comes in mind, or charity, the first thing which comes in mind is the old cloth. That's what we challenge. We actually said that whenever you say I want to donate cloth, that itself is a wrong statement, because you don't donate, you actually discard. So what we have done, we have actually just removed the charity part of it. Today the old material in the tune of almost 2,000 tons every year on which we work, it actually goes as a resource. It goes with a lot of dignity. People work on their own issues. They develop roads, they dig a pond, they clean a well, and then instead of money, they earn cloth, utensil, footwear. So if you see the role and the dream, what we are trying to play is that it is somewhere, the genesis of a parallel economy, which we often say, which is not cash based, which is trash based. And out here there is no donor beneficiary. Everyone is a stakeholder. So the community which gets material ultimately pays in a new currency called labor, and they are paid in a currency called material. So it's a barter, and money is for the logistics of it. That's how that entire development work is happening. And we see a very good scope of philanthropy for sure. Goonj is one of the biggest proof of it, because we are not dependent on any government aid, any big, there is no foundation or funding agency behind us. There is not a particular corporate behind us. It is the people's money. And almost now we have a budget of about 10 crore per annum if you include the disaster relief and rehabilitation work. And 40-50% money still comes from individuals. Lot of people who used to give money just for the religion, because that's where most of the money of Indians ultimately go, even a part of it, if it starts coming to us, you don't need any more money. You don't need funding agencies, to be honest.
Anshu, that's a great point, and I think that that's where we come in, right? That's where the theme comes in.
And that's where, in my opening point, I made as well, that the opportunity for all of us as individuals is to make our philanthropy much more purposeful.
Yeah.
And I think there can be different models for that. There isn't just one, template. One model could be what Ajay described, and I'm very familiar with the work that they do in Rajasthan, out of Bagar, where they've chosen to actually partner with the government, work in government schools, and materially raise education outcomes. Now that requires investing, and I know they've invested about 20 crores to set up that center out of Bagar, where everyone can converge, all the headmasters of the state can converge and work. So there's definitely models where you can do it you know, in a collaborative manner, work with the government, be non-adversarial. And then, as Anshu points out, there are lots of things which all of us can do completely out of the scope of the government, including, I think, what Harsh talked about, which I think is very fascinating, which is spurring innovation, thought leadership. You know, I think one of the things that I love to do is just collaborate with professionals like myself to build institutions without any government support, but which can become, you know, beacons of excellence for raising the standards in general. I mean, Ashoka University is a good example of 64 of us who've got together to build a world-class university out of Delhi. Our hope is that if we are able to build 5, 7, 10 such institutions, it will actually put pressure on the rest of higher education to, you know, step up as well. So I think there are different models, and that's the most fascinating part of this, right? I think they all lead us to the same end outcomes, but there isn't just necessarily one approach which will work.
Yeah. Did you have any resistance, Mr. Piramal, when you worked with the government? You were working with them in Rajasthan. You said you're working with the Mumbai Municipal Corporation, the Municipal Corporation of Surat, where all government schools you are working with now. How difficult or easy has that been? Because we're now trying to determine whether focused efforts can help or work parallelly with governments to help resolve some of India's social problems.
No, I think we need to, the way we believe that in India, if you have to make any impact, you have to have scale. And scale cannot be achieved without the help of government. Because even if you're a Gates Foundation, the amount of resources that you need in India is just too high. And it's only the government that has it. As Amit said, in this education, we're working only with government. In our health initiatives, we are working parallelly with government. In Pratham, we are working with government. So everywhere, if you have to make impact on scale, you have to work with government. There are challenges, but there are challenges on working in the field. Even sometimes the recipients, there's a challenge. Sure. So I look at it as just one more issue that you have to tackle.
Yeah. Have you had experiences, Mr. Mariwala?
No,
though your efforts are very different and they don't run parallel to
the government. I have a completely contrarian viewpoint. Because
why is that?
Because I think it requires one Ajay Piramal or one person with high scale to get the right contacts with the government and to go on maintaining when the governments change, when the bureaucrats change. So you need a certain, shall I say, visibility, a certain stature. I have never thought of working with the government, and I don't think I'm going to work with the government. In my business, I don't need to work with the government. So my need to, one minute, let me finish. So my need to go to the government is not there, but maybe I think because he's at a certain stage and he's got a certain scale as well as a certain, shall I say, stature there, he's able to leverage, which is good. So I think it depends on what you're backing, and it also depends on who you are and what scale you are at.
So let me add, I don't think it's a matter of influence. I think it's a matter of just persistence. It's not that I need to also go. I think it's our people on the ground who go and do it. And it's the work that is done. It's not that, I mean, just because if you know a politician or something which I don't know. So in my business also, it's not that I'm great friends with all the politicians. So it's not really, it is working with the system rather, because otherwise you can't make, I mean, the amount.
Have you had a government say no to you? A state government or a municipal
very often,
corporation?
Yeah, we go through, I mean, what Harsh says is true. There are challenges. If some secretaries are much more for a particular initiative, there are others who believe that that initiative is wrong. I mean, we used to run a service which is called 104 in Andhra Pradesh, which was that every, on a specified day in rural Andhra Pradesh, you would get a van which was equipped with diagnostic equipment and some basic medicines to treat people. Now, there was a new secretary and who had very strong views that you can't do this. You need to have a doctor in every van, and we know that it doesn't work. But so the scheme actually took a backseat for several years. But that's fine. I mean, then we go somewhere else. I mean, so our approach is that in India, if you have to make a difference, you must do it on scale.
Amit?
I completely appreciate Ajay's perspective that if you really want to do things at scale, you have to work with the government. I don't think there's an option. But I also appreciate Harsh's perspective, and actually most of the work.
Politically correct.
No, most of the work I do, like Harsh, is actually out of the sphere of the government.
Okay.
Because when I look at it with the limited bandwidth that I have, I think I'd much rather focus on getting things done than actually interfacing with the government.
To answer a theme that you devised, which is, can Indian philanthropy help social causes or work towards resolving them? For that, don't you need scaled efforts and working with government? Would that, the answer to that question would lie in what Mr. Piramal's experiences have been?
No, not necessarily.
Without negating, what Mr. Mariwala's experience has been.
Not necessarily, and I'll tell you why. Because while what Ajay and his foundation are doing directly gets to the heart of scale, there are other models. And for example, I recently attended a talk where a family foundation in the area of or dealing with orphan kids, foster kids in the US, chose to innovate and come up with a totally disruptive solution to a burgeoning problem of foster care in the US. And they came up with a solution which is completely different from what the accepted solution of the prevailing across the US was. And all that they did is they scaled it up to a level that was possible for them, and then they actually just changed their role to advocacy, went and sold that solution to the government as a better way to reform its system. So they said our role is one of an innovator and one of advocacy. We cannot do what the government does. And actually in the US, number of states have now taken their approach and actually rolling it out. So I think both approaches can work. It's just a very different way of getting to the same answer.
But I just want to add, now just look at education. There are 700,000 schools of public schools in India where the level of education is actually so poor. In every survey it shows, and Pratham does that survey of Asar, which shows that a 5th standard child can only read as much as a 2nd. Now where do you have to change it most? You have to hit the government schools. And if I do that, if I don't work with them in collaboration with them, they will just reject the solution. They say, these are all right, you all are all people, you don't know how to work in rural India, you don't know how to work on scale and so on. So that's the approach we've taken. And I found that in health, the same issues, in water, the same issues. That's why we do it. Okay. But it doesn't mean that that's the only way.
No, this is not about competing approaches. We need a multiplicity of approaches in this country because the problems are so myriad. I think just to go back to the theme, which was that can the collective efforts of people like Mr. Mariwala, in a sense help resolve some of the most pressing social issues that we have in the country, whether it's education or it is sanitation or healthcare. And I suppose one of the illustrations you keep throwing up in our conversations is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the dedicated effort it has put into certain healthcare spaces.
I'm a big fan of collaboration in general, and I think the things that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have done, going back to the point Ajay was making, is actually combine deep might, both in terms of corporate capability and capital,
right,
with collaboration. And in their case, the collaboration is both with government and with other non-government agencies, and really project manage solving a problem. And it's so cool to focus on saying that we will eliminate rotavirus, we will eliminate polio, we will eliminate HIV. But I think what they've been able to do is really set the bar very high and say we will solve problems. This is the problem we are solving, and then work backwards to see how to collaborate across agencies to be able to achieve that. I think that is very, very powerful in the outside the retail space. An example that I gave earlier. I think the fact that now you can collaborate and do almost anything. We have 64 people who have collaborated to build a university, which hopefully is world class in India. In our backyard, I've been fortunate to collaborate with Ajay in building what will be Asia's leading pediatric hospital, which is again a philanthropic project. There are 10 of us who have got together to do that. I think there's huge power in collaboration of getting together with like-minded people to say, I am going to solve a problem. And I think that, in my view, holds a lot of hope for the next few decades.
Let me go to Anshu on this. Anshu, a report that I sort of keep referring to in this conversation comes from Bain. It's their 2015 philanthropy report, and they've said that the need of the hour is activist donors that want to work with government to resolve causes, not just give out of guilt or conscience, but actually work towards resolving problems. Would you say that's the need of the hour as well?
That is certainly the need of the hour, but before that I think I need to react on the government part, because unfortunately the government has always treated voluntary organizations as the implementation organization. That we have this NCLP school scheme, we have this Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan school, you come and implement our ideas. I think that is something which all of us really need to work on. And we need to make sure that in this 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of new ideas have come up in this country, which will solve the hardcore issues with the absolute different approaches. Now, how do we make sure that these approaches are acceptable by the government machinery, and there is no traditional charity model? The example that few years back we were told that not more than 10 lakh rupees you can earn out of as your own income, and even today the cap is that 20% of your total money generated can be your own income. I think somewhere I feel it is pathetic, because the organizations who have the caliber, the organizations who can solve the problems with new approaches, that needs to be encouraged. Then only the collaboration will somewhere happen.
Mr. Mariwala, irrespective of what your personal passion wants you to support, wear your corporate leader hat for me and tell me whether you think the better way for people like you and Mr. Piramal and several other business leaders in this country who are passionate about some of these causes would be to collaborate and try and go after some of these causes almost in an activist fashion, so that you can help resolve along with government some of the key issues. Like we're way behind on our Millennium Development Goals, whether it's education, sanitation, maternal health, all of those issues.
I fully agree with Amit and you that there is a need for collaboration. You select one subject or one area, and then there are multiple stakeholders. In education there are so many stakeholders. I really don't know whether are they collaborating. But the problem is coming in because each one wants to hold on to his own, Okay, this is my foundation, so he's more interested in furthering his image or whatever work he's doing. So I think you have to forget, you have to get the bigger cause, and rather than saying that I need to get credit for whatever I'm doing, sadly that's not happening, for whatever reason.
Fair enough. Do you feel that, Mr. Piramal?
We have a lot of support actually. So we have one called the Piramal Foundation, but we also have another one which is called Kaivalya, which does the same work with the same people.
But that's all you? No?
There are so many. In fact, today we have so many large donors, both Indian and international, who want to come and collaborate with us. Today we don't have an issue of funding, which was an issue a few years ago, but we don't have, because we have an issue now of capacity. How do we build capacity? So I think collaboration is taking place. Pratham is a classic example. It's 20 years. It's only collaboration of like-minded people who are doing it. And it is a global thing. We raise funds in Pratham, and I'm just going there to the US to raise money. So we raise, like Amit, I also raise money. So we raise money all throughout, and it is collaboration. Anamrit, which is the midday meal, is all collaboration. Amit is involved with it as much as I'm involved in it. And so many, he spoke about the pediatric hospital. Now there's a collaborative effort to get this independent media done. So there's a lot happening on both. You do some on your own. There's a lot of collaboration with other like-minded people, with government, with global donors.
But are we managing to make a dent in the issues that we are trying to deal with? Are we managing to make a dent in education? Are we managing to bring that scale together and make some sort of dent in healthcare, sanitation, or are these still very notable, very honorable individual efforts?
No, I think that's a great question, and I think there we have a very long road to travel. But I can tell you for a fact that if Pratham did not exist, 77 million children would have much lower learning outcomes today, than they actually have. Now, the fact is that still those learning outcomes are well short of any acceptable norm that we would expect, because I would expect those children to do as well as any of our kids are able to do, and I think that requires a lot more effort. So, but I think, have we made a dent with 77 million children in case of Pratham? We have, but I think the work is still unfinished. There's a lot of work to be done, which really comes from the scale of our problem. The scale of our problems are enormous, and so we need many more people doing what Harsh and Ajay and Anshu are doing.
Anshu, what do you see missing then in the approach of Indian philanthropists today? If you were to send a message out to, let's say, all the corporate leaders who are probably watching this show and hoping to learn from Mr. Mariwala and Mr. Piramal's experiences as well as Amit's, what would you say is mostly missing?
You know, volume is missing. This is a country of volume. You have problems in volume, you need solution in volume, and you need people who work or support these in volume. So I personally feel the volume is missing. People need to contribute more. People need to contribute regularly. People need to contribute more of the non-issues, not only on the established issues, because as I said in the starting itself that our problems are different. We are still in many areas in the country, we are still at a very basic level. Also, one of the very missing part in this country is the way we are treating the voluntary sector. How many social reformers, social activists, and now social entrepreneurs, whatever you say, how many of them you see where the families have gone in the same profession? Although they are the biggest asset of this country. When Baba Amte's family come to the same profession, when so many other, very limited people have done that, if they come to the same sector, same work, they are much more experienced, they understand the realities, they understand the ecosystem, they can make much larger impact than any newcomer. But unfortunately, we are not encouraging the development sector in that way. We are always talking about that they don't reach a scale, they are not efficient, they are not ethical. I mean, frauds are there in every sector. Which sector does not have fraud? Why do we talk about the fraud in the development sector only? That is absolutely wrong.
I slightly disagree with Anshu on the point he made. I think there's no harm in the social sector holding itself to a higher standard. And I think it will actually evolve in a much more better and a credible way if it actually holds itself to a higher standard than to a lower one. So I think that's just a perspective. I want to go back to an interesting point you made, and it may bring out the left-leaning ideologies in me. But I think what needs to change was a point that you made. I think first of all, what needs to change is how Indians define success. For a long time, Indians have admired naked wealth creation and public display of wealth with lots of adulation, particularly over the last 20-25 years. And, anything, the more the flamboyance and the more the naked the display of wealth and power, the more the admiration that society has put on the source of that wealth creation. I think that needs to change. Like we see in the West or we see in parts of the East, if Indians admire Indians who are solving our biggest and most impactful problems, most difficult problems in an impactful way, I think more people will automatically get into the sector. And I would actually go back to a point that I think Jamshedji Tata made in the 30s, where the purpose of business is for the sake of society. I think we've kind of somehow lost that. No, but I think if you go back, you go back to the 50s. And
I don't want to mock any corporate effort that takes place. Yeah. But I do remember all the opposition when the government imposed that 2% CSR. Yeah. And while I too believe that it should never be imposed by diktat in that fashion, the fact is that tomorrow, if our numbers improve in terms of what companies are doing, it will come down not to a voluntary effort, but because of a legislation. Right?
I agree with you.
So I find it a little difficult to agree with you on that.
But I can tell you, I think people may have gone kicking and screaming to it, but ultimately the same folks 2 or 3 years from now will be touting the deep change and impact that they have made, and actually will be better off having made that impact, because one of the big problems the world faces right now, it's true about India as well, the corporate world is actually losing respect. And I think, it's breaking down of an institution, wealth creation is beginning to get frowned upon. And that's terrible, because we need wealth creation, we need appropriate distribution of the wealth as well, in a voluntary way, in my view. But I think we need wealth creators to be respected, and I think society was respecting wealth creators for the wrong reasons. And I think if they actually use their might, their power, their capabilities to deeply impact social problems, I think we'll have a much more sustainable system and, of course, a more equitable society.
Mr. Piramal, please do. No, please go ahead, sir.
No, I think we must realize, I agree with him, that the business of business is more than business, It is
nobody disagrees with you. I don't know how many businesses follow that as a philosophy.
No, but actually I'm saying that businesses are a very integral part of the society, and I think businesses have to realize that they have to give something back to the society, and they're just not built there to make money. I think it is very, very important that all the stakeholders in a business, whether it's a customer, whether it's employee, whether it's shareholders or society, you have to give something back to each stakeholder.
And yet we need a government to legislate a 2% CSR, which is vocally opposed. I can understand the process is not acceptable.
I sit on the board of Ajay's company, and
so we have exceptions here on the panel.
So
and I'm sure there's a large group of exceptions. I'm not saying these are the only two business leaders who are the exceptions, but I'm not sure.
But we need more of that. I think we need more, because I mean they were making CSR contributions well in excess of anything mandated today 5 years ago, and I know the Tatas did the same thing, as well. So I think
Tatas are really the sort of the hallmark, right, in this space, so to speak. Everybody else.
Having said that, let's accept that it is done that, but at least now the businesses have to spend money. Let them spend in a manner which is actually,
and which is why we were asking, can you come
and more importantly, they have to involve their own employees.
Absolutely.
If they involve their own employees in giving, then you are actually spreading the word of giving on a much larger base. So most of CSR has to have employees a very integral part of implementing that CSR and not just donating money to somebody else.
I want from both of you what you think is missing right now in the effort, since you all have put in considerable personal and corporate effort into this space. What is missing, Mr. President?
I think what people should realize is the name that you all have given, the joy of giving. Actually, there is a real joy. I'm reminded of an incident of Swami Vivekananda. He was in the US, and he and Rockefeller gave a significant contribution to him. And Rockefeller thought that he will get a lot of respect and all from Swamiji. But Swamiji actually, and he visited him more than once, he's actually ignored him. Then after 3 days he acknowledged Rockefeller's this thing. And then he told Rockefeller that, you know, the reason why I ignored you is that you should feel grateful that you have had an opportunity to serve. And I think there's a really deep meaning in that. If all of us recognize that it is, and that's what I tell all our people who are doing this whatever social responsibility or whatever you call it, that we must recognize it's an opportunity to serve, and that is the most important. If you are grateful for that, I think then you will have a joy in giving and it will be a better world.
What's missing, Mr. Mariwala?
No, I think I would agree with what Ajay is saying, that basically I think all of us are sent to this world with a certain purpose.
No, so we all agree on that.
So I think
that's
basically,
why we're here to talk about this.
Why were we born?
Well, what is
if
missing
each of us realize why we were born,
approaches, what
suppose
is
if he is doing some work and he's talking about it, or if I as a company am giving opportunities to my people to do some social work, at that time many times the penny clicks, you know, that okay, I need to do something more, and the joy of doing that time, it really hits the button, you know. No, so it's very important that you bring in awareness at a larger scale and bring in the scale, you know.
I think Harsh is making very important point, because my own journey has been exactly what the two of them have talked about. And I think what is missing often is that people do not have a realization that if they give time and or money in a thoughtful way and from the depth of their heart, that they actually are not giving but they're getting. And I think this simple, however simple that sounds, it's actually missing.
I could argue that's easy to say for those who have the money to give away.
Oh no, let me tell you.
That's easy to say for those who have the money to give away.
Let me, in our this thing, I tell people, if people don't have the money, they don't have to give the money. It's the time, the effort. So people who join our foundation, and we have very highly, really successful people who are running our foundations. They get, and you know many of them, they get 1/5 of the salary they get in the market, or a fraction. And I tell them that this is your contribution. So not everybody can give in money, I agree, but if you give in time, if you give in if you give your empathy or heart,
that's also giving in money, Mr. Piramal. You're giving up a mainstream
So
job,
there are many who are working on weekends. Why are they working? Why are these young kids who come as fellows for us? And you know, our acceptance rate is only 1.5% of those who apply. Why are they coming? Not because they'll get a better job, not because they'll get a better admission, because they want to give. They're giving their time.
Okay, I have a slightly controversial question to put to you, which is why don't we approach philanthropic activities just like you approach a business? A new business that you were to seed, you would get the best of talent, pay them the best of salaries, give them clear objectives, and give them every resource they need to go out there and achieve
that's
it.
What you're
but that's not why is it okay? And I don't mean in your instance, but otherwise, as Anshu points out as well, that organizations that are not for profit are questioned for every 500 rupees. His salary is under the scanner. Why is it like that? Why must that be the poorer effort?
I don't. First of all, just because you pay somebody well doesn't mean you get the best person. You may get a really good foundation which runs with the best systems and processes, with the best vision. Sometimes I feel our guys in our foundation are better than in our business, but I don't want to say that too much.
I've already said that now.
And they are paid less. So that doesn't mean, and in fact I tell people, because it is a much tougher job to work in a foundation than it is to work in a company.
But so
therefore, the point is, therefore you have to have something much more than money to come and work with us.
You have to touch
You have that passion. If you don't have that passion, and money is not, I'm sorry to say,
but would you say that for a new venture you seeded? Saying if you have that passion for this product line, then you are willing to accept
I have so many people who
I want to know how many investment leaders you can hire.
Menaka venture capitalists do it all the time. They will take really committed people who earn X and pay them 1/3 X.
I'm not saying you don't get the people. My question is slightly different. I'm saying, why don't we apply the same principles we apply to setting up a successful business?
Yes, we do.
Setting up,
we do.
I think.
So you can't.
And I don't mean you. I don't mean Mr. Mariwala.
I can show you many instances of people doing. So to be generalizing that is not correct.
Not fair. Okay.
And I'm happy to show you instances not only in Mr. Mariwala or our group, but I can show you outside also. So
I would agree. I think the principles, we are seeing many social organizations now getting built with the principles that have benefited the corporate world. So I don't, I would not, agree with that contention. I think on the compensation, the fact is some of the social leaders we have.
That's one factor.
Money can't buy them.
No, that's one factor. I'm not suggesting that Anshu would be happier doing what he's doing.
Absolutely.
If you paid him an MNC salary or a CEO salary or whatever it is.
But Menaka, you're raising a more broader point, which I think is a realization that has definitely dawned on people.
It's an organizational approach point. It's not about salary.
You have to, just because someone wants to do good doesn't mean that you ignore their sustainability and their basic needs. I think, therefore, compensation in the social sector has changed dramatically in the last 5-7 years. Today, you find the leaders of many large organizations not necessarily earning what they would earn. And Anshu raised the point about his media friends who basically earn a lot relative to him, but they at least can lead a dignified life with certain basic minimum level of aspiration. And I'll make one point to you, which is again a point which holds a lot of promise. The big change that I'm seeing is that the youth of today actually is much more connected to society than my generation was at their age. Good indication of that is if you go to top colleges, and Ajay gave one statistic where 1.5% acceptance rate in the Gandhi Fellowship. The same thing we are seeing. If you look at institutions like Ashoka, 20% of our class foregoes IM level compensation to go and work in the social sector. That's amazing. Look at Teach for India applicant pool. It's massive. So there's definitely people want to go and work.
Maybe my question is being misunderstood. I think the theme of this conversation was, can Indian philanthropy solve social problems? Inbuilt in that theme is the approach that Indian philanthropy adopts to attack a social problem, if I may call it that. And that approach, therefore I'm asking, ought it to be like you would resolve a business problem? Ought it to be like you would set up a new business venture? Maybe is that one of the missing pieces? Since we were talking about missing pieces, is there something fundamentally missing in the approach in itself? Because I know our problems will never all one beautiful day be resolved.
First of all, I don't think business has all answers.
No, there is no day when all problems will go away.
And our problems are so complex that if you say, no, business knows all how business does, and you apply that doesn't work. So for instance, business wants to measure results. I don't think in some problems you can measure results for many years. I think you have to just measure input. Because how can you measure results if you're feeding a person who's really got no food? What is the result?
Right.
I mean, you have to feed. So let's not just get one solution, business knows all answers and we are going to apply. There are so many other people who are finding so many solutions. So, and in India, you cannot say that this is the only solution.
I was not even suggesting that. You're
so
right, sir.
even
I was asking what is missing,
Minka,
and in that I thought maybe some part of that
definitely,
approach.
and I see this already, there are definitely learnings, tools that one has seen, you know, large corporations getting built with, getting deployed now in the social sector. In fact, you know, Harsh talked about, you know, people need to volunteer and contribute, and he's encouraging people to go and spend their time. That actually is very valuable, because often they bring skills which may not necessarily be there in the social sector. But I agree with Ajay. I think it doesn't mean that business has the answers to all the problems. And certainly, by the way, I don't think things that business has created as problems for itself, including excess compensation, is something that you want to go and invest into the social sector.
Well, I don't think we've reached the problem of excess anywhere in the social sector.
True.
I have just a minute left, so I'm going to ask Mr. Mariwala the question that I asked him a few minutes ago. What is missing, according to you, in brief?
No, I think
in the approach more than anything.
Scale in terms of many individuals is adding well.
Okay.
And second is involvement. You need to involve many more people. And I think that's the good sign is that the youth of today is getting involved, whether it's sustainability initiatives or giving initiatives. The youth today, if you go to management school, what is the organization doing in terms of corporate social responsibility?
Is the question you're getting asked?
Absolutely. What is the organization doing for sustainability? So there is a lot of pressure which is coming in from the youth. Even international investors also, they ask you what is the sustainability movement, what is the giving movement. So I think the whole ecosystem is getting pressure from different angles, and I think all that will make, I think, giving much more, and that's evident in the statistics which you talked about at the beginning of the
I hope the numbers improve.
Yeah.
Okay, Anshu, last word to you. I literally have only 30 seconds left, but I do want to end this on what message you'd like to send out to our many viewers who are hoping to get involved in this and emulate to some extent what our panelists are doing.
You know, I think speed and aggressiveness both are missing. And also the realization that yes, there is a mass and people of India or people like the normal people like us can really solve it. That is something that realization has to come, because if we see the success stories in the last decade or so, there are enough success stories where the initiative was very small and then it has scaled up and it has solved some problem to some extent. So I think the participation of the common people in whatever role, even if you have money, you contribute money. If you have time, you contribute time. If you have some ideas, you contribute ideas. So that collective thing is missing. This is what I always say, that you know, doing good is not the responsibility of someone else. Doing good is a collective responsibility, and that's what we all need to understand and do at a pace. The speed is important for sure.
Okay, there could not be a better note to end on. Doing good is not somebody else's problem. Gentlemen, to all three of you, I don't think we have the answer on whether Indian philanthropy can solve India's social problems, but I do think we have enough thoughts here, you know, in a sense, to try and evaluate that. To all four of you, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you very much for watching.